It's a beautiful day.
My name is Brody,
And I'm Jules.
and it's time to think outside.
That's right.
So, Julian, I learned a lot about wildfires this week.
All right.
Yeah, and obviously when I say wildfires, you know, the first thing that comes to your mind is, oh my God, there's a huge fire out in the forest that's destroying stuff and possibly houses, right? You know, a lot of scary factors going into wildfires, right?
That's a wildfire.
Yeah, but I learned that there's actually some good things for the ecosystem that wildfires entail or they give.
Okay, I've heard about that.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do was just present some questions and facts to you and our audience.
Okay.
So, Julian, my first question to you is, do you know what a fire triangle is?
I don't think I've heard of that name.
Okay, so to put it plain and simple, a fire triangle is something that is used to describe everything a fire needs in order to stay alive.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
So, the first thing a fire needs is fuel.
Fuel.
Right?
Okay.
Oxygen
Oxygen makes sense.
and heat.
And heat, because it's a fire.
Yes, so that is the fire triangle.
Gotcha.
Now, putting out a wildfire requires one of these things to be controlled.
Okay.
Now, generally what firefighters do is they'll make small fires that diverge away from the big fire to take away from either the heat or the flow of something. So that's you know, it was really cool because obviously I've never even heard of a fire triangle, and I was like, oh, that's a fancy word.
Yeah.
So, my next question for you is, do you know how much air fire requires to survive?
No.
16%.
16% of air.
So, or oxygen. So fire, it
okay.
requires 16% of oxygen, and air has 21% of oxygen. So, right there, fire already has a huge advantage with staying alive.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. My next thing that I found that was quite interesting was forest fires stimulate flowering and the fruiting of many plants.
Okay.
Did you know that?
No. Well, I think so, maybe.
So, let me ask you, plants need fertilizer, right?
Fertilizer,
To grow.
yes.
So, apparently, wood ash is one of the best fertilizers for said plants.
Okay.
Now, did you know that there's a lot of plants and trees that have just learned how to survive from wildfires?
I did not know that.
Now, I'm not sure what the name of the tree is, but there's a specific tree that when it's near fire, it'll bloom and seeds will fall down and will replant itself again. It's crazy, huh?
Yeah, that is cool.
They have found fossils that are like 200 million years old that show that wildfires have been going on since trees have been on this planet and has changed the way plants grow and the way that they adapt to the environment. I'm sure that tickles your brain a little bit there, huh?
Yeah, it's tingling.
So, now, what do you think the most common fire starter is for, like, when someone has a campfire? What do you think could go wrong in that situation?
Well, probably that they left their campfire going, yeah?
Yeah. You see, the unfortunate part is that 90% of wildfires are started by people, whether it be their fire's not being put out, or you know, they just throw a match out, you know, and
That's a high number.
yeah,
That's a lot.
and guess what? The other 10% is lightning or power lines that fall. So I mean,
well, that would be man-made too.
yeah,
So
but
just like lightning.
so pretty much lightning, or if there's
Just
if there's lava, like I guess a volcano that exploded and there's like lava pouring down, you know, then that's going to start.
So
a
either
fire
you have, if it's not lightning or lava, it's people.
yeah, literally, and you know. That's why, you know, you see those commercials, only you can prevent wildfires. And, you know, obviously it's cliche, but it's true because, you know, when you're in the forest, you see all the little, the shrubs and, like, the little, what are those little things called? Like the pines?
Oh, like pine needles?
Yeah, pine needles.
Yeah.
Now, lighter fuels will dry out and burn quickly. So obviously those little pine needles, if you throw a match on that thing, it's going to light up, you know.
That makes sense. They burn quick.
Yeah, I mean we use those to, you know, if you want to start a fire for your campfire, you can just grab a bunch of those.
Tinder, yeah.
Now, the crazy thing is that there's a chemical inside trees that act like gasoline almost. So when they burn, they release a chemical that helps fires sustain longer. So it's crazy to think that trees are a huge factor in starting fire. Obviously, it also depends on the temperature and the density and the moisture and all that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's crazy to think that fires can just start so quickly.
Right.
Now, let me ask you this. Now, this is something that just completely it blew me away. Now, do you know what a canopy is?
Like the tree canopy?
Yeah, the tree canopy.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think happens when a canopy completely just disappears, when there's no canopy? What do you think happens?
I'm not sure.
I know it's kind of a hard question to answer, and I didn't really think about it either, but when there's no canopy up in the forest, that allows for rain and sunlight to, hit the ground, and that allows more plants to grow because they're not fighting over sunlight, because when there's a huge canopy over the air, obviously there's no sun or water getting down there, so it prevents less plants and trees from growing down there.
Okay.
So all in general, we think wildfires are a bad thing. For people, okay. Yeah. And like we said, I'm going to reiterate, if you live near a forest or a bunch of trees and there's a fire, yeah, it's going to suck because you obviously need to evacuate. But way before humans were even on the planet, when there's wildfires, it helped with the diversity of
it was natural.
Of plants.
Natural. It was good for the ecosystem.
Absolutely. Now, one last little question for you,
okay.
or little trivia for you.
Okay.
So, fire obviously is its own trippy, crazy, thing.
Yeah.
Now, I learned that fire can generate its own wind and create a updraft.
Oh, yeah.
Now, what do you think happens to fire when it's daytime and it's hot outside? Where do you think fire goes?
It spreads? Well, the heat rises and all that.
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean?
So I guess what I'm trying to say is that when it's daytime, the ground's obviously hotter and there's moisture in the air. So fire creates its own updraft, allowing it to spread further than just stay in one area. Now, what do you think happens to fire when it's cold, if it's at night?
Well, then obviously it has to be opposite.
Yeah, it just stays in one area and it doesn't really move as much because the ground is colder, so obviously fire can't jump around everywhere. So that's why sometimes you'll see a fire go from one side of the road to the other side of the road really fast, because that wind is carrying that fire all the way across the road, and that's how huge wildfires they go out of control, because there's a lot of fuel in the forest for fires.
Makes sense.
Clearly, obviously, that's why wildfires are huge.
Lightning pine needles.
Yep. So, do you know that water is actually really good for fighting fires? Now, I know, obviously, people say, "Oh, shouldn't you throw sand on fire?" I mean, I guess you could, yeah, but there's people who use water, or they'll use you know how you see the helicopters flying overhead and they're dropping that stuff on fires? Mm-hmm. It's actually water mixed with a bunch of different chemicals, like a sticky solution that completely just gets rid of the fire, so it has
smothers.
Yep, it completely smothers it. So if you have a fire, if your campfire goes a little berserk, you can just throw some water in there, hopefully, or some sand, and it'll make it go away. Now, the whole point of this video is I wanted to educate as well as inform that wildfires are not something that you should create on your own. You shouldn't just want to go out and be like, "Oh, it's good for the ecosystem, so I'm just gonna start a huge, fire."
Right.
There's many ways to prevent huge wildfires from happening, and what do you think some of those things could be?
To prevent them?
Yes.
To not leave your campfire overnight.
Mm-hmm.
To not dispose of anything that's maybe lit, like a cigarette or a match.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. What else? But tell me some more. Tell me some more.
Well, I mean, you pretty much covered that, or like throwing a cigarette butt on the ground and letting it do that. So I mean, pretty much those are or lighting fireworks, as I've seen some people tend to do. Those are just the things that you can do to make sure that those don't happen.
Mm-hmm.
I guess one last thing to wrap up everything. How many acres of land do you think are destroyed by wildfires?
Well, I mean, by year,
let's just say in the last decade, how many?
In the last decade.
Yeah.
Maybe like 10 million acres or something like that?
You're off by about 70 million acres. So,
Boy.
in the last decade alone, wildfires have burned 80 million acres of land in the U.S.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, that's a lot of acres, and that's just in the U.S. That's not including other countries that have had wildfires themselves. So,
for perspective, if you remember from our first Think Outside, national parks, all the national parks that are altogether equal out to like 50 million, if you remember.
Yep. So
that's
literally,
a really
there's been more acres of land burnt than there are acres of national parks. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah. Well, in the last 10 years,
In the last 10, and that's crazy.
But that's still a high number.
That's a huge number. So, yeah, just make sure that when you go camping, just to prevent this stuff, because in the end, it'll protect the environment. Let wildfires naturally happen on their own. Don't go starting one because you think it's good.
Yeah.
This isn't me telling you should because I told you it helps the environment.
Yeah, a lot of other people will tell you this too.
So yeah, I mean, I hope you gained a lot of knowledge from this. I definitely did. I mean, now I can go share this to more people too. So
yeah, I learned a lot.
I
definitely learned a lot.
I'm glad that you did. So, if you want to find out more information, and I actually went on this website and I found out a ton of more stuff. It's a great website that tells you, it has a brochure and a bunch of other information on how you can prevent wildfires and what to do in case one happens. And we'll have that down in the description below. But it's www.nfpa.org.
Okay.
And trust me, that's a treasure trove of information. So
that's good. Yeah. So definitely, you guys go check that out. Keep these tips in mind and all this information in mind if you're going to be going out camping, which you'll probably inevitably do
at some
this
point
summer. So keep all of this in mind. So, guys, remember, these tips especially in mind, remember to preserve our parks
and to think and go outside.